All right, now we're going to preview the Wisconsin Badgers heading into the 2024 season, the second year for Luke Fickell as their head coach, and kind of was the same as the year before, Dalton. They went 7-6. That was the same year as 2022 as well. Really, they struggled to get anything going passing the football. 93rd in the country in terms of EPA per pass, subpar receiving core, but they have a new quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke that we'll talk about in a little bit. But the defense, Dalton, is really where they're probably going to be a pretty good team this year, mainly because of that outstanding secondary that they have.
Yeah, Luke Fickell's a defensive coach at heart, and he's going to have a really good defense. He's got some studs back there. Hunter Wooler is one of the best, strong safety kind of slot hybrids in the country. We talked about him on our top 10 safety unit position rankings, I should say. You've got a combination at corner and Ricardo Hallman, who's an absolute ball hawk, and RJ Delancey, who was underrated at Toledo last year because he was overshadowed by Quinyon Mitchell. But this secondary just refuses to give up big plays, but they make plays on the ball too. And the combination of those guys and a few others, man, they're going to keep Wisconsin in a lot of games from the back end forward of their defense.
Absolutely. One of the 10 best secondaries in college football on my list as well. So they have a really, really good secondary. Biggest weakness is kind of the opposite on the other side of the ball is the receiving core. This receiving core was really the biggest issue of this team last year. They had the 6th worst receiving grade in the Power 5 last year as a team at 61.6. They really didn't do much this offseason to kind of alleviate that or fix that problem either. And their number 3 receiver, Chimere Dike, transferred to Florida, right? So you lose your number 3 receiver, and your top tight end, Hayden Rucci, is now in the NFL, signing with the Miami Dolphins as an undrafted free agent. So you lose your number 3 receiver and your number 1 tight end to already what was a bad receiving core. I think the receiving core is still pretty easily the biggest issue with the Wisconsin Badgers this upcoming season. But, Dalton, they have a new quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke to hopefully help out that receiving core coming in from Miami. Graded out pretty well at Miami last year. What should we know about TVD heading into Wisconsin?
He did. He grades out well. It's just a very it's inconsistent for sure. The highs are wicked, wicked high. Look, I'll be honest with you. He has an absolute rifle, a top 5 arm in college football as far as just pure arm strength. Absolutely. That he could get it 80 to 90 yards down the field if he loads into it. Absolutely. Just you can see it. The velocity and the ability to make throws downfield and outside the numbers is all there, right? The difference is, it's going to be interesting him playing in Wisconsin in cold weather, whereas he has a much higher – his passing grade at home in his career in Miami is 15 points higher than it is on the road or at a neutral site away from South Florida. So you're talking about that one. He's a true pocket quarterback, so he kind of not a whole lot of mobility, not a whole lot of, being able to handle pressure. And I think the bigger thing that happened last year is when he gets cold, he gets really cold, right? He had a span of 4 starts in the middle of the year where he threw 10 interceptions, and not really unlucky ones either. I believe it was also 10 or 11 turnover-worthy plays at that point. So, he's going to challenge defenses. He knows he's got a 100-mile-an-hour arm. He's going to thread the needle. Sometimes he's not. It's just going to shut, right? The windows are going to shut. But I think what they're hoping is more of a physical presence, at least passing-wise, than Tanner Mordecai gave him last year, which he does have. You have to protect him, and Wisconsin always has a good offensive line, right? And you just have to understand that some mistakes, or I guess almost some Brett Favre-ish bravery, is going to come at least from inside the pocket with certain throws he's making. Because there's certain throws where you look at him and you go, yeah, that's an NFL quarterback, at least a backup, right? The lack of mobility hurts the ceiling, but he's got an NFL just caliber arm. No question. He showed it to us for already, 3 years at Miami, especially I think it was 2021, were just spectacular.
Yeah.
It just runs hot and cold, right? But this is the type of offense and the type of system, he's kind of classic, right? He's kind of like classic, probably under center, pocket, strong arm quarterback that can raise the ceiling if these receivers can get open downfield.
Absolutely, and yeah, he's going to be a fun player to watch for Wisconsin's upcoming year. He's got a really good guy protecting him, though, and Riley Mahlman at right tackle. He missed nearly half of his redshirt freshman season with an injury, but he took a major leap this past year as a redshirt sophomore. He was the 6th most valuable tackle in the country last year, according to our wins above average metric. 78.1 PFF grade, top 15 in the Power 5 among offensive tackles, and he was also top 15 in the Power 5 with a 73.1 run blocking grade. Also was one of the 20 best Power 5 tackles in terms of pressure rate allowed, only allowed a pressure on 3% of his pass blocking snaps this past season. 6'8", towers over opposing defensive linemen. Great athleticism at that size too, which really shines, I think, on zone runs. I think Riley Mollman, Dalton, is one of the top 10 offensive tackles that we have in college football, and probably one of the more underrated offensive tackles that we have in the nation as well.
Yeah, I agree. You don't hear his name a whole lot in the national spotlight, but Wisconsin linemen they always succeed in the NFL, don't they? And this will be another one. But man, roll back to the defense here real quick. Another top 10 guy at his position. We mentioned him earlier. Hunter Wohler at safety, man. This is just a versatile player. You talk about top 5 grades overall, coverage grade, really solid run defense grade as well, with an 81.1. This is like a big, old school, physical, downhill hitting strong safety. Like, you see even in the bowl game, LSU was running kind of this like route underneath with Malik Neighbors on an RPO, and he charged up and about killed him. I mean, he just is not afraid of anybody. He's a wicked physical player who just is kind of just like that ideal Luke Fickell player on defense, right? He's just hard-hitting, tweener, versatile, plays the curl flat really well, can play probably more of a deep half than like as a true free safety. Doesn't have quite the range like that. But you talk about a strong safety, you got to keep your head on a swivel looking for. Hunter Wohler is it.
Dude, absolutely, man. I mean, he had second best coverage grade in the country for safeties, only behind Tyler Nubin, who was the top safety in the draft last year. And he had the second most, or actually the most tackles for loss or no gain as well. So he's a great coverage player, elite in run defense as well. I love Hunter Wohler, man. One of the 10 best safeties in the country, absolutely. All right, bottom line time now, Dalton. With the questions offensively, especially in the passing game, with that receiving core and obviously Tyler Van Dyke as a new quarterback, what are you expecting out of Wisconsin next year? Do you think it's another kind of, they've gone 7-6 in back-to-back years now. Is it another year like that, or do you think a little bit more, a little bit less? What do you think for the Badgers next year?
Yeah, I think unless Van Dyke takes a more consistent step every week in and week out, and these receivers make a big improvement, like you mentioned, it's going to just be another year where they're solid, right? They're not a bad team. They're competitive. They're going to probably compete. Like even last year, they competed with Ohio State. That was a pretty tight game until Marvin Harrison took it over. But they're just missing like that one thing that makes them like dynamic. Like we know they're Wisconsin and they can run and play defense and all that. And I know that's what they're hoping for with Van Dyke comes in there and he hits his ceiling and we're rolling and we're competing now. But it feels unlikely, right? Like you're just always going to get those moments from Van Dyke, especially where it's like, man, it's first like I just need you to not try to make that big brave throw every single time, right? So they're a solid football team, no question. There's 7 or 8 wins hanging out in there somewhere with their defense and their offensive line and just the way they always play. But the ceiling, unless the passing game gets it rolling, does feel limited.
It does. And they play Alabama too early in the season, so that's a tough non-con game. They're at USC. They are home against Penn State. They're at Iowa, home against Oregon. I mean, they have a few losses I'm looking at right now where I think a 7-5 season is certainly likely for them, and even if they lose more than that, I think 6-6. Like I think I could see another year like that for Wisconsin. So it's a little bit disappointing because obviously Luke Fickell created a lot of waves when he was hired as head coach. Great coach at Cincinnati, and they should have an elite defense still, thanks to its really great secondary. But if they want to take a next step, they need Tyler Van Dyke to come in and elevate this passing game in order to do that. So that's what we got for the Wisconsin Badgers, previewing their 2024 season. Of course, we're doing this for all 70 Power 5 teams heading into the 2024 season. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single one of them.